Scary telling.
As I lay in bed, my mind racing with the thoughts of the game streak kicks, I couldn't help but feel like something was off. I had been awake for 3 days straight, trying to beat my high score, but the lack of sleep was starting to take its toll. The coffee I had been drinking to stay awake had stopped working, and I was beginning to feel the effects of sleep deprivation. Out of the corner of my eye, I started seeing things. Shadows moved across the walls, and I heard strange noises coming from my closet. I tried to tell myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but the illusions only seemed to get worse. I felt on edge and nervous, but I didn't want to admit that anything was wrong. I was determined to beat my high score and prove to myself that I could do it. I knew I had to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to keep playing. As the night wore on, the illusions became more and more frequent. I would see movement out of the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. The shadows grew darker and seemed to take on a life of their own. I tried to distract myself by focusing on the game, but even that became difficult. My mind kept wandering, and I found myself making mistakes I wouldn't normally make. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I knew I had to sleep, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was too afraid that something would happen while I was asleep. As the hours ticked by, I felt myself getting more and more tired. My eyes were heavy, and I could barely keep them open. But I was determined to beat my high score, no matter what. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached my goal. I had beaten my high score and set a new record. I felt a sense of relief and accomplishment wash over me. But as I looked around my room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I tried to tell myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew that something was wrong. The illusions had become too frequent, and I was too tired to fight them off. With a heavy heart, I finally closed my eyes and let myself fall asleep. But as I drifted off, I knew that this was only the beginning. The illusions would only get worse, and I had no idea how to stop them. I was jolted awake by a creaking noise coming from my closet. I rubbed my eyes and looked around the room, but everything seemed normal. I thought maybe it was just another illusion, but the sound persisted. I slowly turned my head towards the closet, and my heart skipped a beat. There was a shadowy figure standing in the corner, shrouded in darkness. I couldn't make out any features, but I knew that it was there. I tried to convince myself that it was just another illusion, but the figure began to move. It took slow, deliberate steps towards me, and I could hear the soft sound of footsteps on the carpet. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the sweat on my palms. The figure leaned in close to me, and I could feel its cold, bony hand stroke my cheek. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or even scream. I could feel its breath on my face, and I knew that this was no illusion. The figure pulled back its hood, revealing a grotesque face that was twisted and deformed. Its eyes were sunken, and its skin was gray and lifeless. I could feel my blood turn to ice as it whispered something in a language I couldn't understand. I tried to pull away, but I was trapped. The figure had me pinned down, and I was powerless to resist. I closed my eyes, hoping that it would all just go away, but the figure remained, looming over me. For what felt like hours, I lay there, paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move, and I couldn't speak. I was trapped, alone in the darkness with the closet creature. Finally, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, too afraid to move or even open my eyes. When the sun finally rose, I got out of bed and went to investigate the closet. But there was nothing there. No sign of the figure or any indication of what had happened. As the days went by, I became more and more paranoid. I was convinced that something was following me, something that I couldn't explain or understand. The experience had scarred me for life, and I knew that I would never be able to forget the terror that I had faced that night. The image of the closet creature's twisted, deformed face haunted me for days after the encounter. I tried to convince myself that it was just a nightmare, but deep down, I knew that it was real. The memory of its cold, bony hand stroking my cheek made my blood run cold. As the days went by, I became increasingly paranoid. I saw shadows move across the walls and heard strange noises in the dead of night. I was convinced that something was watching me, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard a faint whisper in a language I didn't understand. I bolted upright, my heart racing. I looked around the room, but there was nothing there. I knew that I had to do something before it was too late. I started doing research, trying to find out what could be causing the illusions and the whispers. I read about sleep deprivation and its effects on the mind, but I knew that there was something more sinister at play. Then, one night, I saw it again. The closet creature had returned, standing in the corner of my room once more. Its twisted, deformed face was more horrifying than ever before, and I could feel its cold, dead eyes on me. This time, however, I didn't freeze up. I knew that I had to fight back, to find some way to banish the creature from my room. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a lamp, and swung it at the creature. To my surprise, it worked. The creature vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. I collapsed onto my bed, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what was happening to me, but I knew that I had to find a way to stop it. Over the next few days, I began to experiment with different methods of banishing the creature. I burned sage, played white noise, and even tried meditation. But nothing seemed to work. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard the whispers once again. This time, however, I recognized the language. It was ancient and guttural, and I knew that it was something otherworldly. I started researching ancient languages, trying to find a way to decipher the whispers. Finally, I found a translation. The words were a banishment spell used to banish evil spirits from the mortal realm. With shaking hands, I recited the words, feeling the power of the spell coursing through my veins. And to my surprise, it worked. The closet creature vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. I lay there for what felt like hours, trying to calm my racing heart. I knew that I had finally found a way to banish the creature, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The memory of its twisted, deformed face would stay with me forever, haunting me in my dreams and in my waking hours. Even after banishing the closet creature, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. I became increasingly paranoid, seeing shadows and hearing whispers even in broad daylight. I stopped going outside, afraid that whatever was following me would find me. I spent all my time locked in my room, researching ancient texts and trying to find a way to rid myself of the paranoia. But the more I researched, the more I realized that this was no ordinary haunting. Whatever was following me was powerful and ancient, beyond anything I had ever encountered before. The more I learned, the more afraid I became. I started seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices in my head that whispered ancient secrets. I knew that I was losing my grip on reality, but I couldn't stop myself. One night, as I lay in bed, I saw the closet creature again. Its twisted, deformed face was more horrifying than ever, and I knew that it had come back for revenge. I tried to banish it again, reciting the banishment spell that had worked before. But this time, it was different. The creature seemed stronger, more powerful. It laughed at my attempts to banish it, and I knew that I was in over my head. I realized then that there was only one way to end this. I had to face whatever was following me head on, no matter the cost. With shaking hands, I grabbed a flashlight and headed into the darkness. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that I had to find it. The darkness was thick and oppressive, pressing in on me from all sides. But I kept going, my heart racing in my chest. Finally, I saw it. A figure, shrouded in darkness, standing before me. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, and I could feel its power emanating from it. I knew then that this was the source of all my troubles. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The figure spoke, its voice ancient and guttural. It told me of its plans for me, of the darkness that would consume me if I didn't submit. But I refused to submit. I stood my ground, facing the darkness head on. And to my surprise, the figure vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. I collapsed to the ground, my heart pounding in my chest. But I knew that I had won. Whatever had been following me was gone, banished to the darkest depths of the underworld. But even as I sat there, catching my breath, I knew that the memory of my experiences would stay with me forever. I had faced the darkness and won, but at what cost? The fear and paranoia would always be with me, haunting me in my dreams and in my waking hours. After the encounter with the figure in the darkness, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Whatever had been following me was gone, and I could finally rest easy. But as the days went by, I realized that the memory of my experiences wouldn't just disappear overnight. The fear and paranoia were still with me, and I knew that they would take time to fade. I tried to go back to my normal routine, but I found it difficult to focus on anything. The memory of the closet creature's twisted, deformed face and the whispers of the figure in the darkness haunted me, even in the daylight. I tried talking to my parents about what had happened, but they didn't seem to understand. They told me that it was just my imagination and that I needed to get over it. But I knew that it wasn't just my imagination. Something had been following me, something ancient and otherworldly. And even though it was gone now, the memory of its presence would always be with me. As the days turned into weeks, I slowly started to feel more like myself. The fear and paranoia began to fade, and I could finally focus on other things. But the memory of my experiences would always be with me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of our world. I realized then that there was a whole world beyond what we could see and understand. A world of darkness and mystery, of things that went bump in the night. And even though it was terrifying, it was also fascinating. I started studying more about the paranormal, reading everything I could get my hands on. I wanted to understand the darkness that had consumed me, to learn how to protect myself from it. And in the end, that was what helped me move on. The knowledge that I gained gave me a sense of control, a way to protect myself from the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of our world. The memory of my experiences would always be with me, but I knew that I had emerged from the darkness stronger and more knowledgeable than before. And for that, I was grateful.